Alright, welcome to the Well-Armed Democrat. In our first video, we're going to do some reloading with the Lee Loadoll 2. Pretty basic. There's not too much to this, despite what people would make it sound like. You can get real complicated with reloading, or you can get real simple. This is on the simple end. This setup cost me about $20 used. You can buy a brand new one for about $50. That's all you need. When you do get it, what you want to do is you want to mount it onto the workbench, or excuse me, rather than mounting it directly onto the workbench, you want to mount it onto a piece of wood that moves, and then you clamp it down to your workbench so you can see what we have there. What that allows you to do is move this around. When you have to fill it, you fill your powder and you fill your shot. So what you end up doing is when you have to change the bushings, which are in here, and I'll explain those in a minute, you're going to have to take the whole thing down and tip it upside down. So you want to have, again, just this board. Don't mount it directly to your bench. So what we have here, you've got your components. You have your wads, which I'm using Claybuster 1118-12s, which are replacements for the Winchester WAA-12 loads. Claybuster is the generic brand that makes equivalents for all of the Federal and Federal, Remington, and Winchester loads themselves, or wads themselves. So those are the wads. You have obviously the shell, the hulls, which you can pick up for free at your local range. Go there anytime that anybody's shot trap, and there'll be buckets and buckets full. The Winchester, the old Winchester AA's, or the red ones, they're a one-piece mold. Next we have the powder. Today we're using Hodgdon long shot because this is what was available. My preferred powder, when I get the choice, is Red Dot. However, that is sold out almost all the time. In fact, when I went to the Kittery Trading Post most recently, this was all they had. This is a long shot, which is a little bit higher pressure powder. It makes an outrageously loud noise. You're the loudest guy on the line every time when you're out there, I promise you. We have our primers, which I already have some in the tray right here. And we have our number 7.5 shot, which is in here. I also purchased what's called an Easy Pack, which you'll see how that works. The shells get loaded into here and a box slips over the end of it in order to facilitate the packing, which makes it a little bit easier. Now, I prefer to load my primers by hand, one at a time, just like that. However, they do sell this, which is the automatic primer feeder. It costs about $12, I think. $15 maybe, somewhere around that. I got it on eBay. I have never been able to get mine to work right. What you do is you end up using this screw, and you come up from the bottom of this and you put it in there, and the idea is it sits in there and replaces this little piece right here. And what ends up happening is the primer goes down, and the primers come, the feed tray goes down with this, and the primers fall down there. I have never been able to get this to work right. I've sanded the insides. I had this little piece of tape on there to kind of put some additional bulk around the outside of it. Nothing worked, so I find it to be quicker. Basically, the best I could do was I would have to, every time after I was done priming it, I would have to flick this and shake it like that, and then about every fourth or fifth one would just hang up entirely and have to be a process to get it to move down. I found it to be just quicker to go with the actual hand loading the primers. So all you do is you start out with your shell, your hull. It doesn't really matter. These were number 9s, some of them were number 8s. Some of these have been loaded multiple times already. You can see the difference between them. This has clearly not been reloaded more than once, if it's been reloaded at all. I can tell it's actually been reloaded one of mine because it has a little mark on it, and I mark mine, have it to tell me how many times I reloaded it. You look at one of these ones that's been burned up like that a little bit. It's not quite as pretty, but it actually still does exactly the same thing. I continue to reload them until they are split. I don't have a good example of that right now because I go through them before I start reloading and toss out the ones that have been split up. Even the ones that have been split, where they split is right along this little crease right here. But even the ones that split, you can actually use them until pretty much they're all, you know, it's got 3 or 4 creases that are split in it. So you have your hull, it still has the empty primer in it, just like you just pulled it out of a shotgun on the line. And all you need to do is you put your sizing ring on it. This is important if you, especially if you're picking up shells that have come out of a semi-automatic shotgun. They have a tendency to expand a little bit. I don't shoot a semi-automatic shotgun, so I don't have that much problem still, but I go ahead and I size it anyway. So again, put that on there, put it right over that hole right there. Move this down so it knocks that out. You can see it knock the primer right out of the bottom, and right in here is where all the expended primers go, and there goes one on the floor. And there we go. Keeping the sizing on it, you put a primer inside the primer seat. I put it right up on there like that and push down. You want to make sure that you get pushed down enough, and when I take it off, I feel with my finger to make sure I run my finger across the bottom of it. So when I'm pulling this out of there, I run my finger right across the bottom to make sure it's seated, and you'll be able to feel if it's not in there at all, and you'll also be able to feel if it's sticking out. Okay? Now you take the sizing ring off and put the next one there, or in the next station. You're going to move this down. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to move over. That drops the shot down in there. Right now you can see that we're using a 155 bushing. Now each one of these bushings is different for each powder. This 155 bushing is the equivalent of about, I'd have to look it up, but I believe it's the equivalent of, and this is the charts that you can download, that's 31.1 grains of the Hodgdon long shot, whereas that same bushing holds about, I think, 18 grains of red dot. So you can see there's a difference between, depending on which one it is, and that's why you download these handy little charts. You have one for all the red dot, for all the unique, you know, all these different ones. So, and again, the internet has all the information you need. You're going to want to find your recipes. The recipe I'm using actually uses Federal primers, Winchester hulls, Winchester wads, or the equivalent of Winchester wads, and then the Hodgdon long shot powder. You have to search around to find that. But the bottom line is at the end of the day, as long as you're not over pressurizing it or leaving it so woefully under pressured that it sticks in your barrel, then you're going to be all right. And there's quite a tolerance here, from what I can tell. You know, I mean, you don't want to go out there and have a shotgun blow up in your face because you had one that didn't come out of the barrel, but you'll be able to hear that anyway, and or having it over pressurized. But you'd really have to be cranking it up to do that. So, all right. So now we have the powder in there, and you can see just down there the powder in the bottom. Okay, you don't have to take it out, but so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to put a wad in there. So you can see it right there, and you come down. Okay, now how much pressure you have to put on there is you just get to the end. Once you feel it at the end, you don't crank it down, because what you can do is you can squish these things a little bit. It's not super easy, but it's funny. It sounds funny, but you're basically going to put just enough pressure. Okay, and then as you bring it up about halfway, move this back over, and that drops the shot down in there. So now you can see the shot sitting on the top there. Okay, now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to move it over to the crimp starter. Okay, in the front on this Lee is the 8-point crimp starter, and the back is the 6-point crimp starter. Some of the Remingtons use the 6-point crimps. I don't like them as much, only because I hold this like this with my left hand until it gets there, and I can't do that when it gets here. So when I'm in my system and in my groove and I'm reloading over and over again, those 6-point crimps really screw me up. So I have a tendency to just throw those out when not throw them out, but yeah, I throw them out. I don't reload those. So, I mean, I will sometimes. They actually make a nicer looking crimp, but nobody really cares what the crimp looks like. So, what you want to do is line up one of these creases in the front right here. Now, that may be different on different Lee machines, I think, depending on how it was put together at the factory, because I've seen other things on the internet that say you want to line up the outward crease coming out. But on my machine, it's the inward crease, and actually when you're back on the 6-pointed one, it is the outward crease. So, but on this machine, it's the inward crease. So you come down, and you let it go like that, and you see how it started. You move it there, and this is your finisher, and you come all the way down, and that's that. Then you drop it in there. Then I put another one of these here, and I go like that. Alright, so we'll do it again. First we knock the primer out, then we move to the new primer station. Feel that primer's in there with your finger. Put it in there. You're going to put this down. Get your powder, the wad, the shot. Comes down, starts the crimp. And now here's one of the things I've found with these Winchester shells. You'll find you have to learn the pressures that you want to put for the crimp starter on different brands of shells. And I find on the Winchesters, I need to put very little pressure on the crimp starter and the heavier pressure on the crimp finishing. Now, you see that little slight ridge right there. But the good thing is that won't matter. That'll feed in both a pump shotgun and a single shot like I use. I use a Browning BT99. All that will fit in there. Again, it's not super pretty, but it works. So, all you do, then you get yourself in a rhythm. You gotta set yourself up a system so that you are just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it becomes kind of a routine while you're doing it. I'm moving a little slower right now while I'm talking. And you do save yourself a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, I can reload a box of these. If I use 1-ounce shot instead of 1 1/8 ounce, I can reload a box of shells for about $5.50 right now. That's for buying all the components at various stores, not having to pay any shipping and handling, and taking what I can get when I find it. But if I load the 1 1/8 ounce shot, then I will have about $5.90 a box. Now, keep in mind, most of these shells are about $7 a box. So you're saving a buck, $1.50 a box. But the key for me is right now is two things. One is that I enjoy this. It gets me down in my little man cave here. You can see it's all around down here, which is kind of nice. But the bigger thing is that I have shells when I want them. Everybody seems to have limits on the number of boxes you can buy now. You can't, I know Dick's Sporting Goods, you can only get about 2 or 3 boxes at a time. I mean, that's pretty tough, to try to go to trap. When I go to trap, I like to shoot, I don't know, 7 or 8 rounds if I can. Minimum I want to shoot 4 when I go up there to make it worth my while. But if you can only buy 2 boxes at a time, you're stuck either driving around or you're stuck ordering stuff off the internet that is unreliable. If you live in a state like Massachusetts, nobody wants to deliver here, so it's a chore just to find a place that will send you ammo. And buying shotgun shells in bulk is really a pain in the ass because they weigh more. So yeah, I mean, saves you a little bit of money, but again, the big thing for me is that I have the shells when I need them. It takes me about 8.5 minutes to load an entire box of shells. So, about the same amount of time probably it takes me to shoot a box of shells. I think around a trap with 5 people standing out there, usually about roughly a 10-minute ordeal, right? So you get these loaded up. Look kind of nice, right? You know, these are some starting to get beat up looking shells, right? But hey, it's not a beauty contest. And while you're doing this, you know, I'm just getting to sit down here in my man cave, think. Give that a little bit more. I get to think. Sometimes I talk to my dog down here. He's a good boy. Just sitting down here thinking. Okay, so we're back here, finishing up, and just at the end here, I figured, just for shits and giggles, I'd throw you a few of the newer gray hull Winchesters, excuse me. I don't like them as much on my machine. I do have a little bit of difficulty with them in the sense that let me see if I can find one. See that little line right there. Again, it's not a big deal. Still loads fine in my shotgun. All the shotguns that I have 4 shotguns that I use. And it definitely loads in the primary one I use. It loads in all the other ones too. So what we have here is the end of this, and I want to show you this Easy Pack. It's quite clever. Normally what you do before I had one of these is you're just throwing them in a big bin, and then you end up having to put them into a box individually, or you know, 2 at a time, and organizing them because they obviously won't fit into the box any other way. However, with this, all you do, of course this won't want to work because I'm videotaping it, but you just slide this down over, turn it over upside down. Whoop. Sometimes that top row gets a little messed up, but trust me, it's a lot quicker. I think that was about a $12 investment at Cabela's last weekend. So it's a time saver. It actually probably cuts 30 seconds off your time for each box that you load. So that's it. That's all it takes to have a complete load of complete box. So again, I didn't time this one, but usually it had been taking me about 8.5 minutes to load one. I would say with this, cuts down about 30 seconds on it, so now I'm probably down about 8 minutes. I'll have to time myself again sometime. But you know, this weekend I loaded about a dozen boxes of these, you know, for just over an hour, under 2 hours anyway, and while you're sitting down here just kind of hanging out. So yeah, you can spend a ton of money on one of these. You can buy a big Mech Junior reloader that's expensive and is progressive, meaning that each one of these stations moves along. You just pull this down, keep pulling it down, and the only thing you're doing is setting the wad on each one. Set the wad on each one. Now that's great, except for the fact that they cost about $300, I want to say, to get started into, versus this one's $50. You'll get a lot of advice from people who tell you, oh, don't buy a reloader if you have to buy this reload all, because it's worse than having nothing, blah blah blah. Hey, I've been doing this one on this. I've been reloading on this one for about a year now. It's the first reloading equipment I've bought, and it has easily paid for itself. And again, it's made it so that I always have ammo when I want to go to the range. I always have shells when I want to go to the range, which is something that the guys at the range who don't reload are having trouble with. So, you know, that right there is good enough reason for me. If you don't have a couple $100 to drop on a mech, you can pick one of these up for, I think before shipping they're about $45 at Midway and some different places like that. Again, this one is third hand. I'm the third guy to be reloading on it, and it works just fine for me. And I'm gonna keep using it until I get really bored or really rich, and neither one of those has happened yet. So, all right, for the Well Armed Democrat, until next time, enjoy your shooting.